What's going on, everyone? We hope you had a nice and relaxing weekend because we have a whole lot to talk about for the market for this week. Looking at Friday, 73% of the S&P 500 closed down in the red, and for this week, we have a whole lot on the schedule, like some new updates related to this year's presidential race and how Biden just dropped out of it. We have also a handful of pretty scary geopolitical events continuing to heat up, and we also have a whole bunch of pretty big stocks set to report earnings this week. Earnings season is heating up more and more, and that is only going to further increase the already existing volatility that we are seeing in the market right now. So we have a whole lot to talk about. We have some pretty awesome setups for this week, and I think there's going to be a handful of opportunities in both directions. So, Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, last week was definitely not the week for the bulls, right? If we actually look at the market from Monday to Friday, I mean, that's not a good look on the SPY, right? On Monday, this stock was trading right around, let's say it opened around 562 to make it simple. We closed the week down around 549 to 550. So we saw a pretty big pullback by the SPY last week, and we haven't seen a pullback like this in quite a while. If we go to the SPY daily chart, there was a pretty big pullback back in March and April, and the current pullback that we're seeing is like the biggest, 2 to 3 day move down since then. So I'm really interested in this downside price action that's happening in the market now, Mike. And I know that, we've talked about the seasonality with the SPY now for quite a while. And, looking at the seasonality chart, we're kind of getting towards the bottom of this zone where the market starts to point back to the upside a little bit. But I know that there was some pretty crazy news that just came out with Biden dropping out of the race. Surprise, surprise. I mean, who called this, right? I know that I don't mean this in a negative way, but even Democrats, everybody's been calling for Biden to kind of drop out, and I've been seeing lots of rumors swirling with it and etc. Looks like he is dropping out and actually endorsing Kamala Harris as the nominee. So pretty interesting here, Mike. I was looking at some of the Vegas odds this morning, and I was pretty surprised to see Kamala at the top up there by Trump.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people are going to wonder how this news will affect the market going forward. And I think it'll be very important to look especially at the heat map tomorrow and just to be aware on a general sense about how the market moves tomorrow, because certain industries, of course, some people like to point out energy or maybe EVs or maybe something related to, I guess you could say guns or whatever the case may be, might have some interesting inflows and outflows. So I think tomorrow will definitely say a lot in what the market thinks of Biden dropping out of this year's presidential race. And if we do see some interesting flows, even to the marijuana stocks, kind of like you're showing on the chart right now, that could also, be just an interesting observation. So going into the market tomorrow, let's definitely keep our eyes peeled to see how the money shifts after this brand new news.
Yeah, and it's going to be a pretty big piece of news, in my opinion. And Mike, I'm even looking at other tickers here in the short term, like DJT, the Truth Social stock. That could end up being pretty big here as well. I know that Trump was kind of pulling ahead in the polls, especially after some of these recent events like the debate and then, the assassination attempt. So I don't know, Mike, maybe for example, we'll see Democrats put out a nominee and it might bring the polls back to more of equilibrium, maybe get it closer to 50-50 again or etc. But I'll be really curious to see how the market moves over the next couple of days. That's for sure. Like you said, some sectors out there like the marijuana sector, EVs and etc. could definitely see some interesting flows from this. And Mike, I know that we're going to have to deal a lot tomorrow with this whole presidential situation. Man, it looks like we're actually having some more geopolitical issues as well, with Israel striking Houthi targets in Yemen. So, we're going to have to be looking for flows from the election news as well as keeping our eyes on gold, oil, and just stocks with fear too.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, gold, silver, oil, these are some pretty big asset classes or just areas of the market to watch closely, because as you have just craziness continuing to develop, whether it be on a geopolitical sense, like you said, with everything going on in the Middle East, or even if you look at it, in terms of this year's election, or quite frankly, in many other perspectives, there's a lot of reasons why investors might want to rush in towards those safe haven assets like gold and silver. And in some cases, some people might even look for bullish exposure with oil and just like other forms of energy. So I think these next couple weeks are going to be pretty telling. And I also think it says a lot how over the past couple of weeks, we have seen more and more positivity flow into assets like Bitcoin, but also we've seen like crude oil start to move up a little bit, and gold and silver have been uptrending for some time now. But again, as the election gets closer, it's going to make more and more sense for some people who've been riding this giant bull wave to shift some of their money into safer haven assets, again, like some of the ones mentioned. But yeah, things are getting pretty interesting.
Yeah, and we've been starting to see people kind of shift their money a little bit around in the short term. We've been seeing some profit taking on some of those bigger tech stocks. We've been seeing some of like the smaller caps start to pop off a bit more in the short term. I know that last week IWM started pulling back a little bit, but nonetheless, that great move over those, 5 to 7 days there as it was rising was really awesome. So I'm still also watching these small cap stocks as well, but it'll be interesting to see how the money does shift. We have so much going on right now. It's pretty insane to say, I can't believe that, like, literally right before we started recording, I got an alert that said that Biden dropped out. I was like, wow, like that was good timing, right? Thank God it came out when it did. But it's very interesting. It's going to be a huge event for tomorrow and even for this whole entire week, Mike. And I know that we have big earnings on the schedule as well, which is going to just throw another wrench into things. We have Tesla, Google, Enphase, Chipotle, 3M. We have so many reporting. It's going to be a crazy week nonetheless here.
Tom, pick one stock for your most anticipated earnings release for the week.
Oh, this is a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Colgate. No, I'm just kidding. Always have to go with a funny one, but I got to go with Tesla, Mike. I got to go with the Old Faithful here on Tuesday in after hours. That's going to be probably my favorite report this week, although there's a lot of interesting ones out here. It's honestly hard to pick. What's yours?
I'll go with Google. So it's also on Tuesday after close. Of course, Tesla's going to be one of the most popular ones to watch, but I feel like Google's especially going to be interesting because, Google's a stock that not only has had such a great bull run over like the past year or so, but it's also like still pretty close to its all-time high, but like this recent selling pressure has been pretty tough with it. So I think like this earnings release is going to do a lot in dictating Google's direction over this coming quarter, because it'll have a lot to do with, either reconfirming the already existing bullish sentiment, or it might even if the earnings aren't good enough, it kind of might encourage some investors who've been riding this giant increase with Google to maybe book in some profits ahead of the upcoming election and everything else we have going on throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, and Google's such an influential stock in general as well for the overall tech sector. Earnings season just started kicking off, and we haven't really seen any, I would say, major tech players reporting yet. We've seen some tech stocks here and there, especially banks last week and stuff. But, whenever you see something like Google start to report, that's going to be huge. I know Netflix reported last week, but as we know, stuff like Google and Microsoft, they just deal so much in tech. It's kind of like one of those huge influential stocks out there, like Apple, for example. They're on that same type of scale. But yeah, there's a lot this week, Mike. Like Wednesday, we even have AT&T, Ford, Hasbro, Texas Roadhouse, 3M on Friday. It's quite the week. Even Coca-Cola, General Motors. There's so many on here, I almost can't even name them all. So definitely be ready for earnings. And then, Mike, on the economic side of things, we're actually not going to have too much this week. It looks like Monday and Tuesday are going to be pretty quiet. Wednesday, we don't have too much either. New home sales. Thursday, there is going to be the GDP growth rate and durable goods orders coming out. So that'll be big 1 hour before the market opens. And then Friday, we'll actually get the PCE index and the PCE numbers, which will be pretty important. So definitely be ready on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the week because, like you said, there are a handful of economic related events, but the earnings lineup is giant. We have, of course, the news with the election. We have the geopolitical news, and we're already coming off of a interesting move that we haven't seen in a little bit related to the market. Like, the selling pressure has definitely been building, and as you mentioned towards the beginning of the video, seasonality so far this July has been pretty accurate, wherein we see a pretty big run up throughout that first half of the month. We see a little bit of pullback around this time of the month, and if history is of a good reference, then we should continue higher throughout the ending days of the month. But regardless, looking at SPY right now, we're still right around that 549 level. What would you say are the key levels for both directions for the week?
Yeah, so SPY's in a pretty big spot right now. I'm going to go out to an hourly chart so that we can scroll back and see some of these bigger supports that are coming up here. So on Friday, there was actually a big support that I was watching right around like 550.80 to 551. We ended up blasting under there and pulling back to 548. So for tomorrow, I'm really going to watch that 548 area, maybe watch it down like 547.75 as well. Some of those wicks extended down to there on Friday, but I'm going to watch that area of support. If we start to break under there, I'll be watching for 546 coming up first, 544, 542, and then 540 on the way down. I'm going to circle some of this price action. There was a lot of chop on the SPY, and the lower end of that range with the chop was around like 542 to 542.50. So just watch that. If the SPY starts to get down to there, I think we could see a little bit more chop come in. As far as resistance, I'll be watching 551 and 553 overhead from last week. But Mike, I know that, the SPY's been going crazy. We've been seeing it fall off. The VIX is starting to look pretty crazy here on the charts as well. And what's kind of nuts to me is I know that we talked about like the SPY seasonality. We also have the VIX seasonality as well. And it's kind of weird to me how like at the end of July, we have the seasonality showing the market going up historically since 1950 anyways. On the VIX historically, since 1990, we've been seeing some pretty big moves to the upside with the VIX, and we're getting all this news coming in with Biden dropping out, Israel striking targets. Man, it's like the perfect combination for VIX to keep going here.
It's an exciting time to be a trader, Tom. I'm pumped for the next couple weeks and the rest of the year, and I think this recent uptick in volatility is just a little appetizer for the rest of the year. So with that being said, let's get into the good stuff for today, which are some setups and predictions. A stock I'm looking at pretty closely right now is Netflix. They just reported earnings towards the end of last week, and they had such a mixed report. Right when earnings came out, the stock tanked lower, and then it popped back higher, and it tried to run on Friday, but the selling pressure was too great where the stock just kind of just chopped around and mostly closed in the bearish way. So I'm going to continue to watch Netflix very closely over these coming days because they just reported earnings and the flows are so mixed where once I think it picks a direction, it'll have a respectable move in that direction because it's just like in a mode of like no man's land right now. But I think it's more, I think there's a better shot for this stock to have a pullback than for it to continue higher, especially given the short-term price action. So it'll definitely be on my radar to the downside, and I would love to see this one break below that like $620 area, which is where the stock had a decent support level over the past couple days. So if we see a break below 620, I will definitely be watching this one closely to the downside.
Yeah, Netflix is an interesting stock. That move was pretty interesting with earnings, pretty flat, but I'll be looking for that to support to give out, and I'll also keep it on the radar. It could be a pretty fun stock. With my first one, I'm looking at Starbucks. They actually had some good news Friday, at least good news by investors' standpoints, right? I know some people might not count this as good news, but it looks like activist Elliott reportedly took a significant stake in Starbucks, and he's in talk with management to try and turn around the company. I know Starbucks has been selling off in a pretty massive way on the daily chart, and it actually found some major support down here around $72. We actually mentioned it on the daily video, one of the 2 days that it was touching right there on that support. So I'll be watching for more good inflows with Starbucks this week. I love how it's coming up off that support, and it has some good news. So in the short term, I'll be looking for a pullback above $79.40 and then a push to about $80 or so come tomorrow morning. But nonetheless, I like this one for tomorrow and even the next few weeks as well.
Sounds good. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is ExxonMobil, and it is to the upside. So this one pulled back a good amount on Friday, but it has been uptrending quite a bit over like the grand scheme of things, not only over this past year, but also over the past couple weeks. So I feel like this is like a nice short-term dip, and this does not mean it's the bottom. It's definitely possible for it to pull back a little bit more, but I definitely like the reward to risk skew with this one going forward. And I also feel like events like we talked about related to Israel and the Houthis in Yemen and everything like that, and everything else going on in the Middle East can definitely put some upward pressure on the price of crude oil, which only further helps a company like ExxonMobil. So either way, ExxonMobil is on my radar to the upside going forward, and I think dips like this one offer an interesting reward to risk setup.
Yeah, and we've been looking at a lot of different things lately, like Exxon and Mobil, Oxy. I know last week they moved very, very well for the most part. I know Friday a lot of them pulled back, but crude pulled back a lot Friday. But from Monday through Thursday, we saw some amazing movement out of these oil stocks. So I'll definitely keep them on my radar as well, Mike. I'm a big oil stock fan. I really think that trading them can be awesome, and the options on ZOM and Oxy are really fun as well. With my first play, my next play, I should say, I'm looking at Amazon. And we're looking at the book map here. So Amazon had some pretty crazy movement Friday. It fell down in pre-market a lot, but ended up holding around this 182 support. And then there's also a major resistance right around 185 on Amazon's chart as well. So pretty much what I'm looking at is I'm going to the book map here, and I'm looking at two things. I'm looking at 180 and 185. Those are two very major levels. If I see a breakdown under 180, I'll start to look at more downside opportunities, maybe set an alert up there, so that you get alerted whenever the price breaks 180. I'm also going to be watching 185 if it ends up ripping and we see a good market-wide recovery and these tech stocks are moving back up and Amazon gets a good pop above 185. I'll keep watching this one to the upside as well, but got to shout out Bookmap here. It's awesome to be able to see these levels like this. 180 had about 200,000 shares stacked there around the end of the day Friday. So that's going to be a huge major level, and it's just a whole dollar psychological level as well. So if that breaks down, I'm sure that's going to pop up on a lot of people's scanners.
There we go. Great stuff there, Tom. And huge shout out to Bookmap with the information on Amazon. But let's get right into today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have SMH to the downside. And this one has been rough, Tom, in the short term.
Yeah, it really has. If it ends up breaking under 247, keep watching it down. And as chip stocks fall, I can't believe SMH fell under 260 and then 250 even last week.
All right. With the next one, we have UAL to the upside.
Yeah, while we saw a lot of stocks fall, the airlines were kind of chopping around last week. If UAL can break above 48.40, watch them back up. And they also had earnings last week, so this would be like an earnings continuation setup.
All right. And then with the last one, we have Enphase for both directions.
Yeah, Enphase has been pretty wild. I know it popped up a lot a couple weeks ago. Last week it started pulling back. If it ends up breaking under 104, then watch it to the downside. I really like that 105 support there. If it ends up ripping back above 110, then watch it back up.
All right, so we have that upside level for a potential move higher. We have the downside level for a potential move lower. That's with Enphase. Don't forget about the upside level with UAL and the downside level with SMH. But either way, these three stocks are on watch for potential day trades tomorrow, if and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. The stronger and more consistent the price action is, the better the setups become. If they don't break the levels listed, then do not force a mediocre setup. But those are the momentum plays for tomorrow. So let's jump right into today's big bunny trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol GLD. So on Friday, the big money put around $400,000 into a bullish GLD play where they bought the 239 strike calls. And this is going to sound a little bit complicated, but they shorted the 249 calls as well, both of which expire on January 17th of 2025. The main thing you need to know is the big money is bullish on GLD going forward. The higher this stock or higher this ETF goes, the better the big money will be in this scenario. In a perfect world, they want GLD at or above 249 by January 17th of 2025. GLD follows gold prices, so basically you could just follow the 239 strike calls for this expiration, and the setup will be very similar regardless. But looking at GLD in the short term, I am not surprised to see the big money bullish on it for multiple reasons. Rate cuts are coming up soon, and a lot of times that has a good impact on the price of gold, but also it is realistic to see the price of gold move higher as more people rotate towards it in times of fear and uncertainty, not only on a geopolitical sense, like what's going on in the Middle East and Europe and in some parts of Asia, possibly in the future, but also in the sense of just, wanting to rotate into safer assets in general. But very interesting play nonetheless.
Yeah, it really is. And I will say, like, the 239 strike seems pretty far out from where we are now. If you zoom out, I guess it's not too bad, but I don't know, maybe on a play like this, like if I was just going to play like straight up calls, maybe I go with something closer to the money, like 230 or something like that, maybe even 220, something in the money might not be bad either. I know it can get a little bit expensive with stuff like that, but nonetheless, I think that'd be smart to look for with a play like this. Just realize that I know a lot of people, Mike, are going to look at gold and they're going to say, wow, it's up so much. Why would the big money like buy this up at the top, right? And I think that the big money's probably, like Mike said, probably taking profits out of something else and like rotating into this in the short term. And like, let's be real, we're starting to see a lot of geopolitical stuff, not just in the Middle East. Like Mike said, we've also been seeing stuff about Taiwan with China, right? I mean, Trump just came out with some statements about Taiwan and China just last week again, and kind of, brought the topic back to the forefront again. So I don't know. It's very interesting with gold. We're seeing a lot of stuff heat up, Mike. And I think that if we continue to see a sell-off out of the overall market and out of tech, I think that we'll also see gold, hold up and possibly move higher as people start to have that fear creep back in, right? Plus, it's an election year, so we have to realize that the closer we get to November, the more volatility that could be hitting the market. So just keep that in mind in the short term too. But it's a very interesting big money play, Mike, because I think a lot of people are going to say, like, how could they be buying at the top? But we have to realize, like, this is gold, right? This is one of the biggest asset classes in the world, right? It's not like something that can't keep going, and it's actually been fairly flat for a few months, right? We just started to get that breakout just last week and then had the pullback. So honestly, it's been consolidating quite a bit.
True that. And whether you're looking at gold or oil or the market overall or big tech stocks or even Bitcoin, there's a lot going on in the market right now. And I don't care if last week was great or horrible for you. Let's do everything possible to make this week as great as it can be. And it ultimately starts with having good fundamental trading habits. And I know I say this a lot, but it's just that important, and it ultimately means more than any short-term directional bias that you may have. Making sure the fundamental things you're doing on a day-to-day basis mean more than anything else. And it starts with, basics like having stop losses and having plans before you enter trades, and then respecting your plan, following the money, always looking for new updated information, and continuously being willing to adapt to changing market conditions. So let's do everything we can to have a great week with good long-term trading habits. If you guys are new to the channel, consider demolishing that subscribe button to get our videos recommended to you more often. We cover all the news that you have to know about. We show charts you wouldn't otherwise see. We cover big money trades and everything you need to know about the market in normally around 20 to 25 minutes or less. Sometimes we go above that time threshold, but it takes us hours to make these videos, and we cover everything you need, so consider subscribing to see them more often. And Tom, before we close out, let's give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Cam, in the Stocked Up Discord. They had a great post on Friday showing their amazing week last week. Look at that perfect stair step up. So Huge shout out to you, Cam. Keep up the great work going forward. And you've been in the community for a couple months now. If you are into short-term trading, definitely check out that first link in the description and the comments down below to get access to the Stocked Up trading floor. Not only do you get access to our custom trading bots, but you can chat with Tom and myself all day long, access the big money trades before they're talked about in these daily videos, and basically join the best spot for short-term trading. There's a lot of people to network with. You could also join in on our weekly live events, which are some of the best things of the entire week. So consider getting in on the action with that first link in the description and the comments down below. Besides that, we have an exciting earnings schedule lined up, so I'm pretty excited, and thank you all so much for watching. Let's make this week a great one.